Good evening, everyone. Hey, I am so sorry I'm late. I am a punctual freak normally. 6 o'clock is 6 o'clock. I really value everybody's time. So I want to make my sincerest apologies. I'm actually going to tell you what happened. I had planned on going on at 6:30 because of a work situation that freed up. And I went back and wrote 6 on Twitter previously and put it in the stream. So apologies that I'm a little bit late. I wanted to really quick, I'm going to point this down so you guys can see, show you this jacket I'm wearing. And I want to tell you why. So Women with Wings, and the insignia is butterfly wings. If you've ever followed me on Twitter, you'll see that I always participate in this charity event. And it's basically for women who have been in a domestic violence situation and they need immediate shelter for them, for their kids. Anyway, it's just a great charity, a great organization. I haven't seen the figures for this latest event, but it's huge. Tens of thousands of dollars they raised. I'm going to put that figure out on my Twitter, and next time I come back on YouTube, I'll give you the figure. I had asked for it, and they were still doing the calculations, but I know they're done now. But anyway, this jacket, this girl made. Her name is Natalia. I think it's Designs by Natalia or something like that. And I said, I'm going to buy this little jacket. Obviously, it's all for, we bid on things. It's a silent auction. And so I bid on it and I got it. And so I'm wearing it tonight. But this really is nothing here nor there about what we're going to discuss tonight. But I still wanted to explain why I have this very lively, probably something I wouldn't normally wear. I kind of like it. Butterfly jacket on. So thank you all for being here. Again, hopefully asking for a little forgiveness for starting late, completely my error. And one thing that I really want to always have happen on the channel is that if we say 6, we're going to start at 6, or if we say 7, it's going to start at 7. Because again, I've always thought it was rude to be late. So again, my apologies. All right, we have a lot to discuss. I wanted to talk really quickly about Rachel Morin and just give a quick update. Again, Rachel Morin was murdered on the Ma and Pa Trail outside of Baltimore. She was jogging. She's the mother of 5 kids. The perpetrator attacked her, struck her with a rock, raped and murdered her, thankfully left his DNA. And that DNA was put into a database that compared to DNA from a case in the Los Angeles area of another rape victim. Actually, there was a mom and a 9-year-old. They were both assaulted. We don't know exactly what happened with the 9-year-old, but we know both suffered injuries. For those of you who saw the recording that was made, that was shown, the video that was shown nationwide over and over again to seek help in finding him, you can see somebody close the door. And we always said, oh my gosh, that looks like a female hand. How could that person, it seems like they know him. You know, how can you show a bad guy out the door? But I'm sure after the assault, she probably went to the door to shut it. And just terrifying. But anyway, that's where that match was made. Law enforcement had no information such as social security card, driver's license. They had nothing. They only had what he looked like from that profile vantage point. And they had the description, obviously, from the 2 surviving individuals in Los Angeles. And then they had DNA. So it was obvious to me, and I'm sure a lot of you out there and people in law enforcement, that they were likely dealing with an illegal person because of the fact that there was just nothing that was happening in terms of identifying this individual from known databases. That's just a clue in law enforcement. It doesn't always hold true, but it's something you immediately look for, that is likely the situation. It's funny, if I say anything like that on Twitter, oftentimes I will be just, demolished. Oh, you think he's, from another country or Hispanic because the way he looks, you could be wrong. He's not necessarily illegal. Listen, I'm Hispanic, for those of you who don't know. I was raised Jenny Lynn Brown, but my birth certificate is another name, and it's Spanish. And that name, my parents are not from here. I'm first generation American. So I'm very sensitive to the fact that, first of all, I love people coming from other countries here. But guess what? Just do it legally. Go to the other country you're going to reside in and do it properly through the proper chains. Don't sneak across the borders. And I'm not trying to be insensitive to people who are poor and impoverished in other countries. I understand that. Guess what? We have a lot of poor and impoverished here. Go to our inner cities, go to Kentucky, West Virginia, the back roads of many of the places that you'll see all over this country. I don't just want to name those states, certainly. There is so much poverty. There's so many children that don't have lunches. There's so many children that are not properly taken care of. They don't see a dentist. They don't receive eye exams. They don't receive medical care. They're horribly taken care of and managed in large part because of poverty. So we have a lot of issues here. There's enough people getting murdered here by U.S. citizens. There's been almost not quite 200 by the Customs and Border Patrol, by their most recent statistics of how many individuals have been murdered via homicide of some nature. That could be murder, that could be manslaughter, but murdered by illegal aliens, not just foreign nationals. I'm talking about people illegally here. And that's really concerning, because one is too many. And now we have Rachel Morin. Now we have Lake and Riley that just, have recently happened. But there are so many others that don't have that name that's as well known as them. But I wanted to get back to really quick extradition. So this week he was extradited back to Baltimore. He was actually captured. This individual was captured in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, interesting about this is that he had been working for approximately 3 weeks for an individual. And this individual actually did a post where they said, oh my gosh, I was in, around this very dangerous person. He gave me false identification, false paperwork. I always found it interesting that Victor Martinez Hernandez, that's his name. Antonio is the middle name. On his Facebook, he used Victor Antonio Martinez. Remember, Hispanic people, it's the second name that's their true surname. And then they have middle names like we have. But Hispanic people will have two names. The last name is actually their mother's name and not the name that they actually use from a legal standpoint. That's why sometimes you'll see two names. So immediately when that was seen on Facebook, I looked at that Facebook picture and that was him, in my opinion. And then, of course, it did turn out to be him. Even though the name was just slightly different than the name that was used in various law enforcement circles, depending on whether they took out Martinez and used Hernandez. Anyway, he was extradited back, and I wanted to explain that because it seemed to me from the messages I was getting that some people might not understand that. So when you're arrested in Tulsa, you're wanted in other jurisdictions, they will put a hold on you. Why do they put a hold on you? They put a hold so you don't get released. And I can't tell you how many times the law enforcement hold. Now, this was a high profile case. This was a different animal. But in other cases, individuals will be arrested, and by the time it's figured out they're wanted in another jurisdiction, and the hold is put on because this all takes paperwork, and maybe that clerk was gone, or maybe that's the Tuesday clerk that puts it in, or they put it in at night, whatever, that person gets released. I can't tell you how many times that happened as an FBI agent where I said, wait a minute, he should have a hold. He's wanted here, and it was too late. So anyway, they did a great job making sure all the holds were on him, and then they extradited him. And the reason that he didn't fight his extradition, this was really not a big deal. I could tell you, in the federal government, in 28 years, I never saw one case that I can recall that I was involved in, knew about, assisted with, where the individual fought extradition. Why is that? And that's because there's really not much to fight in a case like this. I mean, basically, the other jurisdiction is saying this is where charges are, and we have probable cause because typically there's an indictment or a criminal complaint that's already been authored. And there's just not much they could fight. One person wrote, well, you could fight that you had an alibi for that particular day and time. But typically, that is not the case. And typically, extradition isn't argued in a court of law, especially when there's federal public defender, because public defenders know they're not going to win that argument unless, as one person wrote me, it's something extreme, like literally they were in another country and couldn't have committed the crime, something like that. All right, that's it for Rachel Morin. I just wanted to quickly touch base about her. I also wanted to quickly touch base about Ethan Crumbley. And what's in the news about Ethan Crumbley? And recall, he was the shooter that went into the Oxford School in Michigan, and he shot and killed 4 students. He basically, very troubled child. There were warning signs and whistles going off for quite a long period of time. And even the day of the attack, on, I believe it was a math paper, he actually wrote a gun shooting, and I believe it was a girl kind of stick figure dying with blood coming out. The teacher saw it. He was taken to the office. The parents were called in, and nothing was done. They asked the parents to take him. The parents are, well, I'm an Uber driver. No, I'm busy. And they didn't take their son out. They had bought their son a gun. For those of you who don't know this story, they took him to the shooting range. Lots of pictures of that. They gave it to him for his birthday gift. He was 15 years old. He's not even legally allowed to own a gun. Long story short, he went in and committed this horrible crime. And when he was pulled into the office, in his backpack was the ammunition and the gun. And neither the principal, the administration, nor his parents ever asked to look in that backpack, despite that drawing. So what's going on in the news right now? Well, just to let you know, again, if you're not following the case, the parents have already been convicted for their role in a manslaughter capacity, for their role in purchasing the gun. And if you watch that trial, all the messages, I mean, it was clear that I'm not sure, and I'm sticking by what I've always said in this case. I really don't think that they were in touch enough with him that they really understood he was capable of killing others. It was clear they thought he was going to possibly kill himself, or that could happen. But I'm just not sure that they really understood he was capable of a mass shooting. But nevertheless, they were convicted as well. And Ethan, he pled guilty to the slew of charges and was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole at 15 years old. So now the state appellate court is saying, listen, that is way too much. He was only 15. Mitigating factors were not included during the sentencing phase, such as he could be suffering from fetal alcohol syndrome because his mother was an alcoholic and she drank while she was pregnant with him. All the other circumstances and issues, he was neglected. There was a CPS report about that by the parents. The fact that he time and time again reached out to his parents for help, and was just completely neglected. So they're saying, listen, this life without the possibility of parole is just too much. What the prosecution said was, well, listen, he literally right in front of another student, shot another student for that student to watch. And he also riddled someone with bullets, multiple bullets into one body, that he had plenty of chances to stop and to think and to not act in this murderous, heinous way. And by the way, let's think about the victim families who suffered, who, you know, who have zero rights now because they're, meaning the victims, because they're deceased, and everything that meant to these family members. So two sides to every pancake. I really want to know what you feel about that. Do you think at 15, with the mitigating circumstances, but keeping in mind the aggravating circumstances and the fact he just pled to everything, didn't really put up any sort of fight. He took full responsibility. He said, listen, this isn't about my parents. It's about me. It was my decision. Do you think, oh, I forgot to mention his dog died, and his best friend, the only person he talked to, moved away right before this incident. Definite triggering mechanisms, I think, that triggered this event specifically. Not that there would have been others down the road, but that's, I think, the triggering events for this. Well, I want to hear what you think. Do you think at 15 years old, you should go to prison for the rest of your life for this type of a crime? So I can't wait to see what you have to say about that. Let me just take a look. Yes, they didn't secure it. They didn't secure the ammo. The whole thing was terrible. Just look up one thing here. See if there's anything else. Chloe, the troublemaker. Yep, we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk about the John O'Keefe case last. I want to talk about next, really quick, just touch on Buster Murdaugh. So for those of you who don't know, Buster Murdaugh was the only surviving son of the Murdaughs. They were in the Low Country, that's in South Carolina. The father, who was a legacy attorney, his parents and his parents' parents, listen, they had money, they had power, they basically controlled the criminal justice system. They had lawyers on both sides of the law. They had a lot of power in that county. And the bottom line is, Buster Murdaugh's father, Alec Murdaugh, it's really Alex, but they kept saying Alex, so I'll go with it. Alec Murdaugh, by his defense, said that he developed a strong opioid addiction, and that led him to his crimes, which were essentially stealing millions of dollars from the people who had hired his law firm. So kind of went something like this. You come in and, or he found out about a particular, whether it was a slip and fall or motor vehicle accident, and then he would prey upon that. He would get a settlement and basically keep the settlement, and other various forms of embezzlement. I mean, his white collar crimes were huge and reached the federal level. So anyway, those were the crimes that he admitted to committing. But the crime he didn't admit to committing was the murder of his younger son, Paul, and his wife. How they were murdered was essentially by a dog kennel. His son was shot point blank in the face. His wife was actually on her hands and knees crawling and shot shot, I believe, 5 times, if I recall correctly from that trial. It was horrific. A lot of people didn't think he could possibly have done that murder. But what got him were 2 things. The first thing was he lied and said he wasn't down at the kennels, and Buster had done a Snapchat about one of the dogs at the kennel to a buddy, and he was on the Snapchat, his voice. So he was busted. And what essentially happened also was he took the stand and just lied like a rug. And that was the end of that case, I believe. He was convicted. His appeals, he wasn't offered an appeal. So essentially, he's in prison for life for those murders. And even if he wasn't, all his financial crimes would have kept him behind bars as well. His son, oldest son, that's his namesake, but goes by Buster, redheaded kid. He was not murdered. He, as I recall from the facts, he was asked to come down to the Low Country to their hunting lodge. But for whatever reason, Buster didn't want to come down there. He was at one of their other properties in town, in the city, and he didn't want to come back home. I personally have alleged that I think if he would have, I think this was a family annihilator situation with Buster or with his father, Alec Murdaugh. I believe that because he was going down, he was going to be destroyed. He was losing everything. He was going to spend the rest of his life in prison. He was taking all his family with him too. And I think that's my opinion and my belief. So it's the family annihilator situation. It happens all the time, unfortunately. And I think that's what this situation was. But Buster never came. Buster's alive. And there's another case that the victim is Stephen Smith. Stephen Smith was also from the same area. He was a gay young man in this area, and he was found deceased. Initially, it was ruled that he was hit by a car because he was in the middle of a street. But later, it has come out recently within the last year or so. No, he was murdered and bludgeoned, and his body was moved. And so there's a big investigation into that. Well, unfortunately, I think a lot of people jumped the gun and just assumed Buster did this because there were all these crazy rumors about Buster having some sort of relationship with Stephen. There were just a lot of rumors that were going rampant. And so what happened was Netflix and a whole list of other media conglomerates put together a series that many of you have probably seen. I believe it's called, this off the top of my head, The Low Country, like the Murdaugh Dynasty of Murder. I could probably look that up really quick, or if anybody else wants to look it up. So anyway, what they basically did throughout that show, not exactly saying it point blank, but was that Buster had killed Stephen Smith without any proof of that. Part of it was because I believe a relative had gone to the scene afterwards, which another lawyer, but I think that was because the brother of Alec, I think that's because they're ambulance chasers, if you will. They're always looking for an opportunity to make money. And I believe he had also represented the Smith family before on another matter. There were reasons, but I never believed, and most people who looked at this did not believe it was Buster. You look into it, but all of the proof, and I actually posted this, all the police reports that were done by it's South Carolina's law enforcement division, SLED. I said it out, South Carolina's law enforcement division. Actually work with somebody from SLED. He's great. In any event, SLED looked at all those reports. It was clear it was these two other guys. I mean, that's kind of who was named, whose name came up throughout the reports. It's just everything kind of led to them, to me, being the primary suspects. In any event, Buster's suing. Buster's upset. Buster has every right to sue and to be upset. Somebody asked, and I'll tell you who it was. She is so amazing. I don't think she does YouTube, but she is on Twitter. Her name's Nicole Goforth. What is she? What's her handle? It's Goforth, Goforth. If you're on Twitter, I do highly recommend that you follow her. She really loves to dig into cases. She's not the type of person that is in it for any other reason than you can tell. She has a passion about true crime. And I'd like to think that everyone here has a passion about true crime. it's something that you care about. Either you want to advocate, you want to understand, you want to move forth truth. And that's how she is. And she had a great question for tonight. And her question was, how do you think this precedent, because it's already been set, right? No matter if they have to give money to Buster or not, no matter what, there's been a precedent set now of getting sued to these companies when you're on there. And in fact, a magazine editor and owner, if you will, from the Low Country, he was also sued because he was interviewed. And that made me think. I think I've been in 13 documentaries so far, different ones on all the different, whatever, Tubi, Paramount, Dateline, blah, blah, blah. It made me wonder, people who speak in those, you better be correct on what you say, or at least have the goods to back it in terms of from a legal standpoint. As an example, if a grand jury and law enforcement has found probable cause to believe somebody committed a crime, well, then you have probable cause to believe somebody committed a crime. That wasn't the case here with Buster. Rumors, and law enforcement wasn't indicting him. So to me, if you're without an indictment and you haven't seen pretty compelling evidence, I think it's safe to say it's probably not a good thing, whether you're a content creator, whether you're on a platform or whatever your situation is. It can be dangerous probably to point the finger because you could risk getting sued. Obviously, Buster is going after the big pockets, because I know a lot of creators and a lot of people on social media were also blaming Buster. He's not going after them. He's going after the big, deep pockets. And again, they were also the ones that did the most harm. They did a lot of harm to him, to his reputation. I mean, his father did the most harm to his reputation, even though it wasn't Buster's fault. But that's the case with Murdaugh. All right, I'm going to make sure there's no questions about him. Oh, hi, everybody. Hi. Scandal. Yeah, educate the person to be a good citizen. All right, we're moving on to the heated case of Officer John O'Keefe. Officer John O'Keefe, I think everybody probably knows, he went out one night drinking. Included in the people he was drinking with was Karen Reed. Karen Reed and he were supposed to go to a fellow officer's house. His name was Brian Albert, and get dropped off and join this after party. It was Brian Albert's son's birthday, and he had about 10 people over. He was at the bar, but he said, "Hey, come on over. My son celebrating with a few friends." Literally, it was like 4 or 5 friends, his birthday. "Come on over and join us for an after drink once the bar closed down." So that's the setting of kind of how this whole case evolved. Then it diverges from there. The defense says Karen didn't go inside. Well, actually, the defense and the prosecution both say that. The defense says John O'Keefe went inside that house and was murdered by Albert, by a dog named Chloe, by a 17-year-old, and by an ATF agent. The defense or the prosecution says no. She was mad. She was angry. Their relationship was on the rocks. She was drunk. She had 9 drinks, and that's just the 9 drinks they can account for. I always say that people who are drinkers, they pregame, they drive to the bar with a drink, I guess maybe just to save the money from that one drink. But I see it happen all the time. And but 9 drinks we know about. She was drunk. He was drunk. We haven't seen his blood alcohol level. We're probably going to see that, though, on Thursday when trial resumes. He essentially gets out of the car, and then from there, according to the prosecution, he was hit. The tail light smashed. There's tail light pieces there. The glass he was holding is smashed all around him. The straw from the cup that he's seen leaving him, that's laying right there, too. He, by the prosecution's theory, his head ricochets back, hits the curb, and splits his head open in the back, and he dies because No one ever finds him. Nobody ever sees him because it's a very dark corner of this house, kind of right where 34 Fairview, where this occurred at, and the next door neighbor's house kind of come together, and there's trees and there's flagpole and it's dark and it's snowing. And so anyway, he's never seen by anybody in the house. He was never seen by anybody in the house go in. I'm talking about testimony now. This is the testimony. But people who believe that conspiracy believe everyone's in on it. They believe the medical examiner's in on it. They believe Canton Police. They believe state police. They believe the medical examiner's office. They believe the fire department's in on it. All the paramedics, all the people in that house. They believe this is one huge, massive conspiracy involving about 70 witnesses that are covering, okay? And they're covering to protect Brian Albert, a fellow police officer, an ATF agent, and a 17-year-old. And I guess the dog, Chloe. Not to get into the weeds of the case, that's what they believe. But I want to talk about these witnesses and what happened today. Okay, so first of all, and what happened yesterday. So first of all, I want to talk about Officer Paul. Officer Paul is with the state police department, Massachusetts, and he was, I thought, was going to be a very pivotal witness to testify regarding the crash reconstruction about what happened. Hi, Suzanne. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate that. And in any event, his testimony was problematic. Let me tell you why. It wasn't problematic, honestly, in his theory. His theory, according to, he's a crash reconstructionist. That's what he does. He's got 10 years on the force. He's gone to all these classes. He's got the background to be labeled and to be accepted as an expert in crash reconstruction. And he says that O'Keefe took a glancing blow on his forearm area where you see those cuts. And as the arm penetrated the outside plastic covering of the tail light that we've all seen, pieces shattered, his arm was cut. He was pushed back and hit his head and died. He died of two reasons. One, the cranial damage combined with hypothermia. So he had a skull fracture. Okay. So that's what he says happened. He thinks got out, the car hit him, he flew back, and that's what happened. To me, it makes a lot of sense. I don't think that if you murder somebody inside, you make sure to plant the cup he carried from another location and crush it all up around him. His cell phone was in his back pocket. I believe it was found underneath him, but I believe he had it in his back pocket. There was glass embedded in the bumper of Reed's vehicle that didn't match the other glass that he was surrounded upon or around. I really think they got in that fight in that car, which we're going to hear about, and that there was a glass inside, and because she was already drunk, that maybe he grabbed that glass and said, "You're not drinking this," or whatever, in the heat of the fight or whatever. I think he had a glass in each hand when he was hit. I think his cell phone was in his back pocket. As that hit him, everything crushed. So the glass that was closer to the bumper, that all flies straight to the bumper. The other glass he keeps a hold of falls back and everything crashes. Remember, this would be instantaneous. This is just like bam, very quick. So anyway, it's not what he said that didn't make sense. What the problem was, first of all, he was not articulate, meaning he seemed to not be able to get out his thoughts that were in his report. He kept wanting to read his report. This judge would not allow that. She wanted him to be able to articulate his findings without much use of the report. And you could see that put him into a complete bad situation. I've talked about this before. Some people have complete fear and phobia over public speaking. And there is no worse place to public speak than in a courtroom with cameras, with victim families, with the defendant looking at you, getting barraged with questions, and then having a guy like Jackson going after you for everything you say. In other words, you know that every word you say is going to be turned upside down. You know that when you're on the stand, they're going to do everything they can to discredit you. He did it multiple times. Well, didn't you say this yesterday? Didn't you? And then, even if you didn't say that yesterday, Jackson will leave you to wonder if you did. Jackson is a very talented attorney from the standpoint of being able to put a witness on their head. And this was not the type of witness that is good at public speaking at all. So he came off unknowledgeable. He came off untrained. His vocabulary was not good for an expert. He came off bad. I don't think his conclusions were bad, but how he got to the conclusions, he couldn't explain, and he could not articulate well his bona fides and understanding what he was trying to explain and why he reached his conclusions. So he came off really not unbelievable. I don't think anybody thought he was lying. I think he just came off as inept, and that's bad. You compare that to today, and these were the two expert witnesses, crash reconstructionists. They work for a crash reconstruction firm. Finally, we get to hear sort of everything. They have PhDs. They understand everything about physics and you know, how a vehicle can impact the body. And they were great. I didn't expect anything less. Listen, if the Bureau is going to hire a third-party company or DOJ, it's going to be the best. It's going to be the best because they can get anybody. They have deep pockets. There's no limit to what they can spend on these experts. I'm guessing these experts made somewhere between $500 and $1,000 an hour, and inclusive of the report writing, which is always extensive. It takes so long, and it's so difficult to write a report. Basically, to put in all the information from the documents you read, and to narrow it down to a concise explanation and give opinions. So my point is, wow, the two today were amazing. They were great. But I will also say that they're not the guys that are boots on the ground investigating accidents. And I pointed this out this morning. If I am hiring a plumber, I don't care if my plumber has read a million books on plumbing and how my plumbing works and this. I want a guy who's fixed a million faucets, right? Because he comes in, he knows exactly what to look for because he has the experience of knowing if it does this, it's probably this. If it does this, it's, and I'm not trying to make a weak analogy between that plumbing matches up against accident reconstruction. I'm just trying to point out the differences between a academic engineering point of view of things, which is very important. That's what you have that the FBI hired versus somebody who is boots on the ground for years, going to accidents as a patrolman or a trooper, on the highway, seeing these kinds of accidents. I would believe that neither individuals, the crash reconstructionists we saw today or the trooper we saw yesterday, have probably ever had a case where somebody was going 22 miles an hour in reverse in the snow under these exact conditions, and they're trying to reconstruct it. Having said that, the crash reconstructionists from today, for the first time we heard this, that basically they could make some conclusions. At least that's what I heard. We're going to hear a lot more because Dyer for them was really limited to their background and experience. It wasn't limited. Judge Cannoni almost basically said you have free reign. But it seemed like to me, obviously Jackson didn't want to have them deposed and have two different times to kind of go at them. And Lally didn't take the opportunity. I don't understand why. I would rather have the judge pull him back, but it didn't seem like the judge was going to pull him back at all, because Lally had never had a chance to find out what these people had to say. So this was his chance. And his questioning was pretty limited. The one thing I also got from today, which was really concerning, is that they only had to work with the documents that the FBI gave them. That's pretty limited when you hear what documents they got. It was very few. And typically, as an expert, you want everything, because you never know what kind of nugget is going to be buried in some report. It happens all the time. You're reading 4,000 pages. And I know with my clients, when I say, I want everything, they're like, oh, well, this really, okay, I know. Just send me everything, because there are nuggets that you find that you don't know that you're going to find. And if you can't look at everything, there's no way to really be able to do exactly what Judge Cannoni did today. Was during her voir dire, during her questioning, she said, listen, where did you get your information from? And did you have everything? So anyway, I found that all very interesting and important. I think both of them will be able to testify, but I don't know exactly what they're going to say. I don't think anybody thought, although today Kevin said he thought, I didn't think that gash in the head was from the car. I always thought the gash in the head would have been from ricocheting back on the ground. I still think that. And from what I could ascertain today, those crash reconstructionists are saying, listen, that gash wasn't from the car, but I don't think anybody thinks anything other than that. So it'll be interesting to see what they really end up testifying to. They are obviously qualified. I think they're going to come off amazing on the stand and be very believable and very knowledgeable. Okay, finally, on the last expert that they posed, which was the dog bite expert. Wow. Okay, I have so much to say about Dr. Russell. First of all, what I found most intriguing, and Dr. Cannoni did too, listen, Dr. Russell found the case. You know, she was subscribing to the Globe. She heard about the case, and she contacted some intermediary, in other words, somebody that Jackson knew. They worked together in the DA's office. So she inserted herself in this case. That is so rare. As an expert, you're not calling up looking for business. Most experts have so much business, they don't have time for, to be calling people up for business. They're turning down cases because you can only handle so much. So it's very odd to me that she was doing that. That made me think right off the bat, and I think Cannoni had the same thought, is that this is somebody who just wants to be in the limelight, back in the limelight. Listen, she hasn't worked for 30 years in practically speaking. I'm not talking about teaching. I'm talking about in the field. She's not a pathologist. I mean, she has no business testifying about anything, in my opinion. And her experience with dog bites are related to police dogs. She did not look at Chloe. Chloe, my understanding, is half German Shepherd and half some other kind of dog. I believe that to be true. Chloe's in Vermont. They have known about this case for so long, but it's another example to me where they just keep spinning, right? Now, they've decided Chloe was involved. Well, if they thought Chloe was involved, go get Chloe. There's nothing that would have stopped them or prevented them from examining Chloe. Do you remember when Yannetti said, after there was no DNA found, do you remember Yannetti saying, when she said, do you have anything further? And he said, no. I mean, it was a done deal. And Yannetti was, got up in grandstanding about that later. Well, I was misunderstood or whatever. Anyway, they found this person, but they found her 6 weeks into trial. That is completely a Rule 14 violation. That is not in keeping with the rules of discovery. The reason they have discovery rules are so both sides have time to examine what's being put forth and get rebuttal witnesses, get witnesses to refute what's being put forth, have time to prepare for an examination of this nature. I think Lally, he's always very gracious, very nice. Said, well, I could probably get a rebuttal expert in a week. I don't know how he's going to find that, dog bite rebuttal expert. I think it would be a travesty if she's put on. The two engineers, terrific. But this woman, the other thing is she listed what she had looked at multiple times during her testimony. She never reviewed the fact there was no dog DNA on the sleeve, yet she testified there was a puncture wound through the sleeve. Of course, there was a puncture wound through the sleeve because that glass, the blunt force object tore up his arm. Not a dog. There was no DNA. There's no canine DNA. She never looked at that. She never looked at, apparently there's some information regarding Chloe and a previous bite mark or something that was brought up today. And Jackson said he sent it to her. She said she didn't look at it or didn't see it or something. So one of the two of them, either Jackson isn't telling the truth, or Jackson thought it was sent, or Jackson doesn't know, or the woman didn't want to look at it. Doesn't make much sense to me. Or she overlooked it. I don't know. Maybe it's an innocent mistake. But here she rendered an opinion, by the way, in less than 24 hours. They said, when did you get it? Oh, well, he sent it to me and I gave him an opinion the next day. Okay. Now, some people might be saying, well, look, Proctor did that too. Proctor had force multipliers. He had an entire CERT team out there looking. He had everything that they had found. He had all the paramedics that had done interviews, that had overheard these things being said. He had fellow detectives that were out interviewing and conducting investigation. He had video. He had, I don't mean of the incident. I know people are going to say, oh, they didn't have video of the incident. I know that. But there were other recordings, like what we're going to get to, which are going to be Karen Reed's voicemails. He had lots of information because he was force multiplied. It wasn't just one person looking over everything. I can tell you, because this is what I do every day, you cannot. These reports take a long time to look through, to understand, to evaluate. And I can't imagine how overnight you can get sent something and overnight you have your expert opinion. And by the way, she said she didn't write one note and she didn't write a report. It's very unusual. It happens. Sometimes your client doesn't want you to write a report because sometimes it's too expensive, or sometimes they just want you to take the stand in defense of your position. But it's unusual. Most of the time, clients want a full-on report. She didn't even write a note, she said. She didn't write anything down. Very suspect. I don't know whether Cannoni's going to allow her, Judge Cannoni. I hope she doesn't. I don't know what will happen. I'm going to read your comments because that's all I have for tonight. Chloe knows not to go for the throat. That's right. I mean, it's interesting. Let's see. No, of course, you want a fair trial, but it's not right. It doesn't give the other side the chance to prepare when you're told in the middle of trial about a expert, and you should have been looking for a bite mark canine expert for the past, ever since this incident happened and you took the case. It's blindsiding. It's a Bush League move. And Jackson is too experienced and he knows that he's trying to get away with it. Maybe he will. but it's a Bush League move to do what he is doing. And it's a violation of a rule of law, period. He's already been found in violation by Judge Cannoni. What the remedy will be for that, she's already said he's in violation. I don't know what the remedy is going to be. To me, the only one remedy can be that she doesn't testify. Okay, let's see. Proctor had an opinion. That's so true. He didn't testify about his opinion that quickly. Right. So I agree with you. Let me see who this is. Blanco. 100% agree with you about that Jackson would have told her not to write a report. But she said on the stand, and she hesitated, and I don't know how truthful it was. I posted on my Twitter, so you can easily go back in and re-listen to testimony. At Coffindaffer FBI for those who of you who are on Twitter X. But she is asked that question. Why didn't you? Well, I just didn't. Well, did Jackson ask you not to? Watch her hesitation. I mean, this is just coming from my FBI, how I look at people, if they're telling the truth or not. It did not come off as being very honest to me, and it doesn't make any logical sense. When you have a client, you ask them at the very beginning, are we going to need a report or not? Because if you don't need a report, you're really a consultant. Right? You're consulting, you're looking over documents, you're providing information, nuggets that you see in those documents that need to be evaluated. You're their investigative eyes and ears. And sometimes experts get hired in that capacity, a lot of time. Other times you're hired to produce a report and testify. Typically, when you're hired as a consultant, you're not necessarily even going to testify. You might have to, but it's more rare. You're consulting. So no matter what, it's the client that determines that. So when she said, no, Jackson didn't ask, watch that. I want to hear what you, please, if you're on Twitter, tweet that, what you think about that. Yep, the prosecution almost, I know you think she was framed. I don't think she was framed. I think that there's probable cause plus to believe that there was a lot wrong in terms of investigation from the standpoint of, some things are more important than others. To me, the biggest one that bothers me, well, two now, the crash reconstructionist. I wanted to see this beautiful recreation. I wanted a graphic. I wanted a film to be played. I was shocked when I saw that that's all the crash reconstructionist had, as well as that is all the reconstructionist was able to articulate they knew. Oh, Angel, thanks for being a new member. Thank you. So I was shocked with that. I'm sure many of you were too. What I'm hoping is that because there's two crash reconstructionists that are going to testify, what I'm really hoping is that we are going to see another bite at the apple, as Jackson would say, for the Commonwealth, and that they are able to pull together somehow right now a reconstructionist expert that is at the same caliber as the FBI experts to come in and to testify what they find. So we'll see if there's rebuttal. Okay, let's see. Okay, they couldn't. Did you write what I'm going to say? Exactly. Oh, who is this? Moxie? Was that Moxie? I think it was Moxie. People are saying, why didn't you search that house? I'll tell you why. It's the same reason you didn't search the neighbor's house. He was found in between, or the house across the street, or any of the other houses. You have no probable cause. And people in this country are free from illegal or unjustified searches and seizures. They should never have to worry about, because somebody dies on the curb by their house, that the police are going to have a warrant and storm in, even if they attended one of your parties. Further, she said she hit him, she hit him, she hit him. How are you going to, if you, as a law enforcement officer, are the affiant on a search warrant for somebody's house, and you know that was said, which they knew that was said very early on. Remember, the paramedics told one of the police officers, and that was related to the state police. If you omit that, oh my gosh, you're a liar. You should be fired on the spot if you're going to falsify an affidavit to get into a house and omit that that a person said she hit him, that you ruled that you section 12 that person. Section 12, you have to admit them into the loony bin for a bit because they're suicidal. Why was she like that? Again, I'll say it again. Just like OJ went crazy and I'm going to kill myself and was in a Bronco and driving around and, basically feel sorry for me. That's the same thing you have because their world has just crashed in on them. They've realized they've killed somebody. They realize that person's dead, not coming back. They realize they're going to probably be found liable. Remember the initial statements by Yannetti, and I've posted them so many times. He said this was an accident. This wasn't on purpose. We're going to be able to show that. Exactly. I agree with you. It was a manslaughter. And hopefully the jury finds their way to that because I think that's what happened. If they don't, I'll respect that decision. But, there's not one iota of me based on all the information we know, which are her spontaneous confessions, which were heard by so many people, which was her calling at 5 a.m., carrying Roberts and saying, John is dead. That's huge. The glass around him, the tail light fragments and implanted in his shirt, his DNA on the tail light, his hair on the bumper, one hair that was found. That didn't magically get there. People didn't pluck one and then go to the Sally Port. We've already proved it's impossible for the time it was into the Sally Port, where Proctor was, and who found the hair for any of that to have happened. So in any event, I know a lot of people still believe in the conspiracy. Maybe a lot of people just are so upset with how this was handled that they want to believe in the conspiracy. I'm upset too. I think they were let down too, the O'Keefe family. But at the end of the day, the proof still exists that she hit him with the Lexus SUV. And we're going to see what these crash reconstructionists say, because I think they might just say that the head wound wasn't caused by the SUV. But let's see. We still don't know because they didn't go over that today. Okay, let me see if there's any other questions. Let's see. Yeah, she did. Who is that? Grayson, something Grayson. That's what happened. Jim McCabe immediately goes up and tries to get in the house. They don't answer the door, whatever. But you can see her on the film. I think if you want to look at that, it's day 3, maybe day 4, where she does. And it comes out actually early on. I even think day 1, day 2, where Jen McCabe is seen going up to the house. She does try to say something. She calls. That's all discussed too when Jen, through the review of Jim McCabe. So she definitely did try to wake the Alberts. Let's see. I should wake up, sister. I think I'm awake. Let's see. Yes, the hair was John O'Keefe's. Thank you, Heisenberg. Yes, I agree with that, Heisenberg, saying that her supporters don't know what's coming down the road. I mean, the bottom line is no matter how it ends, whether it ends up that she's convicted or she's not convicted, there's going to be a civil suit, no doubt, for wrongful death. And we'll get to see if what happens in that proceeding. A much lower bar standard for conviction. Yeah, he was. I know Terry. So if Terry is saying about being a sound sleeper. Listen, these guys had been up till 1, 2 in the morning. They were drunk, inebriated, full of alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. When you've had a lot to drink and it's late at night, your body finds its REM sleep, it goes to sleep, and you can go into a very, very deep sleep. They were on scene for such a short amount of time. I'm not sure that people understand this isn't necessarily a lights and sirens situation. There were lights for sure there. I think there were sirens, although the testimony on that was very interesting. A lot of them said they don't remember putting their siren on. And you have a load and go situation. I think by the timing they were there, maybe 10 minutes. So I think people are picturing like this, all these police officers and everybody there for an extended period of time. It was quick. They went, they found John, they tried to resuscitate him, they loaded him in the ambulance, and they got out of there. And again, some people even said that they didn't do their siren. That initial cop said he doesn't think he did. And I can't remember on the ambulance, that was asked too, and I can't remember that answer. Certainly lights, but I don't know how much siren activity there was. I need to go look back at that. I know. Okay, so somebody's responding. Somebody named Sue is probably upset with Proctor. Okay, I get it. I am appalled at what Proctor said on all levels. All levels. We've talked about this before, but it was to his buddies, I think high school buddies, he said. And so the biggest appalling thing is he should never be talking about an investigation. As an agent, you weren't even supposed to tell your spouse. I'm sure some people cheated on that. I didn't cheat on that because I'm weird about that. I always was so worried that something like this would come up and I'd be deposed and they'd say, well, did you ever tell your spouse about a case? And this way I could say, nope, sure didn't tell them about it. And in the expert witness world, you sign NDAs. So you can't talk about anything. So it's no different from when you're an agent. So the fact that he was even talking about any details in that case was so wrong. He's going to get in a lot of trouble, not only because of his language, more so because he was discussing a case, an active murder investigation with his buddies. As far as the other comment that he only made one comment to his superiors, which was, looking for nudes or something to that degree. I really think that was tongue in cheek. It was supposed to be funny. It was late at night. It was after 10 o'clock. He'd been working all day. I think that was tongue in cheek, non-professional, but it was those other comments and him commenting outside that are going to get him in trouble. And also the fact it just makes him have the appearance of being biased against her. And probably because of all the information he had compiled, he was probably pretty mad that she killed a fellow officer. I'm sure that was part of it. And I'm sure he had a horrible impression of her, a horrible impression of her. In any event, I'm not making excuses. He's going to get in a lot of trouble. We'll see if his career even survives this. He's got Giglio now. How these cops support these big houses. So let me tell you, with Brian Albert, that house, as my understanding, was in his family for years. It was passed out. I don't know how many years. I think his parents had that house. So as an example, I bought a house, my very first house when I was 22, right after I graduated from college. I had a good job as an agent. So even though I only made $400 a week and didn't have any savings, they took a chance on me. I still own that house. That house I bought for $48,000. It's worth a lot now. That house that was in that family for many, many years, that's how they owned almost $1 million house, because it, the value went up over decades. The other issue is, of course, is that he sold at the height of the market. How many of us wish, I do, that I would have sold at the height of the market? Because now it's not the height of the market. But anyway, they were smart. They sold at the height of the market, but they sold over a year after this incident. Anybody could have gone in there, the ridiculousness. They're talking about the flooring being pulled out. That was because of a toilet leaking. They're also saying that I'm somehow, my mentor in the FBI was Proctor's wife's in-laws. So ridiculous. Never even heard of any of these people, but people will spin the lies. They just keep going. Oh, let's see. Thank you so much. Heisenberg again. When we finally see the truth, everyone that has supported her will feel embarrassed. The people on YouTube will feel embarrassed. I don't know, because I think there's been so many different reasons why people support her. I think some have supported her for financial gain. I think some have supported her through payment or other money or this fundraising and people getting paid. I think some people have supported her not because they're getting paid, but because they have followed people who were convincing. They never read the documents themselves. They probably don't watch the trial every day, but the people that they're watching have been convincing and have not told the truth. I think other people realize that are creators, if you are not on the side of the conspiracy, because that is what's selling. Look, my channel as a startup channel is not doing well at all, really, in my opinion, because I do a lot on this case, and the people who support me or the people who support Karen don't support me because I don't support Karen. And so if I changed and said, oh, now I'm convinced, oh my gosh, my channel would likely blow up. My Twitter would blow up. But I've worked too long, and all I really care about is my reputation. So I'm not willing to sell out, but a lot of creators are, and I'm watching them one by one. So I don't know what they will do in the end. Let's see. No, they sold their house for, I have it somewhere. I think I posted it for over close to 950,000. 950,000. Height of the market. Made a lot of money. Let's see. Oh, yes. Thank you for hitting the like button. I appreciate it. We haven't heard them yet, Suzanne, but we're going to hear those voicemails. Is it a crime to hire the YouTuber and creator, the blogger, I call him? It may be a crime, because if she colluded with him, as we've seen in a lot of text messages that have already been made public, and according to, again, he's been charged with 18 felony counts of witness intimidation and harassment. If they colluded on that, in other words, if they conspired, what is a conspiracy? That's where two or more people come together and enter into agreement to do an illegal activity. If that happened, in other words, if she was involved in the harassment in any way, again, they have seized her cell phones. I haven't seen anything moving through that case. It's in Judge Cannoni's court. We're going to see. We're going to see what kinds of agreements, if there were any, that were between the blogger and Karen Read. Again, we've seen them. They've come out. We've seen a lot. But we'll see what the court decides on that, and if the prosecutors decide to charge her. Let's see. Oh, my glasses are dirty. Let's see. No, the lady, Dr. Russell, she did not say she thought it was a police dog. The question was asked of her, wait a minute, your articles, which I also posted on my Twitter, I posted any article she was, had ever given an opinion on. You're going to be disappointed. I was looking for an article. Like, when I consider an article, I consider a couple pages, 3 pages. That's what I want to see. I want to see a few paragraphs. That's what she wrote from what I saw. It's just a few paragraphs, and it was about a police dog. So truly disappointing. I hope Judge Cannoni looks at those articles. But she, in fact, said that a police dog bites differently than, a domestic animal that is owned by someone. Okay, let me see. Yes, I think the voicemails will come, Moxie, but I think it's going to be Thursday, Friday at the latest. Yeah, well, so, okay, who's that from? Brooke. So, Brooke, when you talk about the two dogs, I know exactly what you mean. It's at minute 32, I believe, off the top of my head. 32, I think. She says another, she does say like another dog or another bite from another dog. I don't know whether she meant another dog or she was referring to other bite marks. Everybody, you guys should listen to that again. It does sound like she says another dog, but I'm wondering if she just didn't mean another set of bite marks. Okay, looking close again. Exactly. Where are the incisor marks? There's none. And in fact, and I posted this on Twitter, made a blue circle around it. They showed the picture, and if you guys have ever seen the picture, basically, let me pull it up on Twitter really quick and see if you guys can see this. Because I know a lot of people, I'm coming to find out that people that are on YouTube aren't necessarily on Twitter. Here it is. I'm hoping you guys can see this. But I took this, I took this straight from, so that's the defense, right? I didn't take it from those doctored pictures I've seen around. And in fact, the one I thought they entered as an exhibit looked like a doctored picture to me because it's so much redder than these marks. But you see this mark, right? See if oh, dang it. I want to see if I can get my apologies. Okay, I'm going to do it this way. You see, man, I'm backwards. Do you see this circle? Do you see these bite marks right there? She said that those 3 marks were from the top teeth and that below it, which I couldn't even see anything below it, were the bottom teeth. Anyway, moving on. Let's see. What does this mean? Oh, here we go. Sorry. Do we know who came up with the conspiracy theory? Okay, so this is what's interesting. Again, Yannetti, who originally, represented her before Jackson was ever involved, he said it was an accident. Okay, not to digress. So how did we get to this crazy conspiracy theory? It was definitely contrived, I believe, by the defense team. It was said that somebody offered that as a possibility and refused to testify about it. And in fact said, no, I'm not testifying about it. I'm not even sure if it's true, but that he was this individual, this third party, won't even mention his name, that he was the one that initially introduced the idea to Yannetti. I don't know if any of that is true, but he's not willing to testify. So it tells me he didn't really believe in it, because if he did, why would he be ashamed to testify? And secondarily, I think they just ran with it. And I've always called it the emperor's new clothes, and I don't want me to insult anybody, but talk about a case where you could say anything. I mean, the ATF agent is still employed. The ATF agent has had nothing happen to him. Brian Albert was employed this whole time up until this year, finally retired after 33 years of service. He was a decorated cop. He was on the show Cops, the Boston, I think it was called Boston's Finest. He led the fugitive task force, is my understanding. Those jobs that are high profile, right? SWAT, fugitives, organized crime, the stuff that you're going to be seen out in the public, the stuff that you're going to get in the most trouble for because you could take a life or they could shoot one of your fellow officers. Those high risk jobs are only given to the best of the best. And that's what Brian Albert did. So like him or not like him, he had a very high profile job and was on television. Oh, thank you so much, Suzanne. Did they offer her a plea deal initially? Very good question. And I am not sure that they did, but somehow I thought I did read this. I'm going to get back to you, Suzanne, the next time we come around, because I'm sure True Crime Tuesday will also cover John O'Keefe. I'm going to get that answer for you, Suzanne, because we need to get that answer. But you know, it never made sense to me that she didn't fall on the sword, I call it. You know, I was drunk. I loved him. Although today she's wow, that was insane. All of a sudden, it just bleeped off. I'm not sure why that happened, but hopefully you all are here. Is everybody still here? Oh, well, I guess everybody is still here. Crime Conduit is okay. Moxie said she's back. Literally, just all of a sudden, it just crashed and it said, check your internet, which I just have brand new internet, so I'm not expecting problems. But any event, I'm back. Yes, we're all here. So I just have to say, I'm really having fun with this. Tonight, my family is all either working or at our other place or someplace else. So I don't want to keep jabbering on. I like to get to the point and just get off. But I so much like this interaction with you guys all at chat. And I want to tell you why. It's because even though my family is very supportive, and I have other law enforcement officers I can cut some of these cases up with, for the most part, my contemporaries, like the former agents that are retired now that I talk to, all of them really don't keep up with these crimes. So it's really fun, or not fun. It's interesting, exhilarating. It's important, I think, to have people who have your same passion, who care about crime and advocacy, to kind of talk with all of this. And you guys know as much as I know when it comes to a lot of the facts in these cases. And I love your insights. So that's why I'm staying on a little bit longer than normal. Oh yeah, it says mine is glitching. I think I'm fine now. Let's see. Yep, they came up with the conspiracy. Chloe might be an alien. Oh gosh. All right, everybody. I really appreciate you all being on here. To the mods, thank you so much. And we'll do it all again next week. Most likely, I'll let you know. I'm actually going on a short vacay for my anniversary. I had the big 28-year anniversary. It's a long time. But I am so blessed and so lucky. For those of you who have also been married for a very long period of time, here's to you. You know, it's the most wonderful and glorious thing. But I always say my biggest accomplishment in life is being happily married, because it's, you know, it's a blessing. So until next time, may justice be served.